Absolutely. Now, attendees, we're going to get ready for Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes, and because of how busy these folks are, we respect their time. But we want to make sure that you all get a chance to ask some questions. So make sure to get those lined up. Lisa, you want to walk us into some Q&A?
So I think for the participant or the participant panelists now, one of the things I was hoping to have answered is what areas of your work, and sort of we're coming at it from three different but very related ways. Do you hope to see more youth in to become involved and beyond just sort of the classroom experience? Because both Tammy and Celeste, you've mentioned you sort of did youth advocacy, right? Tammy, I'm going to assume you were a youth in the 80s. And how
Uh,
that.
a little back more than that, but I'll take the 80s. I was having babies in the 80s. Listen, everywhere. When I'll just give you an example. When I arrived to the Girl Scouts in the early 2000s as their COO, I was like, why aren't there girls in the being the receptionist? Why aren't they in the sales room, in the gift shop? Why aren't they running camp? Why aren't they on the board? And so they should be everywhere. They're capable. They need to be pushed to the greatness that they are, and they need to have space. We have youth organizers at SOC right now who went virtual like a week and a half after our staff did. Everywhere is the answer.
Celeste, Stephanie? Stephanie, you're muted.
There we go. Let's try one more time. I would add that, yeah, I mean, I think the youth, the role of youth in this is so fundamentally important, because they're the heirs to the system, right? I mean, the end of the day, right? And so I think and I think this goes back to a question that was raised earlier, right, is like what we do as educators. And I think one of the things that we really need to be mindful of is that we're also modeling. We're modeling for youth what this can look like, right, as we do it, right? You know, in our roles as educators and as community educators, right, is that we're modeling what this can look like. And so, for instance, for me, that means something like when I every time I meet a young Latina or a young woman generally, but Latinas in particular, right? I want to be the friendly reminder, right? That's like, look, like there's a lot of work that we can do, right? And let me show you and help you model for you what that can look like. And then let me show you how other people have done it, right? Let me remind you that we come from a long history of doing this type of work, right? And so disseminating that information and sharing that information, right? So that the kind of next generation that's coming up doesn't have to wait till their third year in college to know that, you know, people from that look like them have engaged in revolutionary struggles before, right? This shouldn't come as news late in the game. This should be part and parcel of what young people are exposed to from very early on, right? That people that look like them have been doing amazing work, right? And that we're modeling what that work can look like.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. All righty.
Can I? Oh, go ahead. Say it, Rob.
Oh, I was just going to let the attendees know. Attendees, you have all been elevated to panelists. And so for those of you who, what's going on, Arijit? You already knew this was coming, Arijit. For those of you who would like to begin to engage with the panelists a little bit more directly, you can unmute yourself and begin to ask some questions. We want to give our panelists just 1 minute or two to gather their thoughts. We'd like to hear just a parting comment or two, but we'll let Adam, how about you jump in, Adam, and then we'll give our panelists a chance to say a closing comment. And then folks, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Adam.
I just wanted to respond to Stephanie there because my own journey has been, I started with it. I didn't like history, but I chose to search for truth by studying math and philosophy, found that inadequate, and then turned to community. and have spent the last 12 years of my life only listening to people in community as opposed to going to people like Rob and listening to him. But I just wanted to point that out, that there are so many cases where people who look like you, or people of color, especially in Milwaukee, just aren't offered those channels of inspiration from their own community. And we have really failed them. But to everyone's point, let us not keep that failure going, and let us not get distracted by the 2-story Target in Bayshore. I'm serious. I know that sounds like a punchline, but yesterday they announced they're building a 2-story Target in Bayshore, and I saw a ton of people being like, yeah. And it's like, Target's, that's an opiate. That's a way of deadening people's, sorry, go ahead.
Tell us how you really feel, Adam.
I just felt very, this was such a lovely conversation.
Yeah.
I just felt like getting angry at the end.
Panelists, can you begin to give us some wrap up comments and thoughts, and then attendees, we want to hear from you for a few minutes. Anybody want to start? Anybody want to start with some concluding comments about identities and activism and communities and COVID and defunding the police? And we didn't even get a chance to talk about immigration. We didn't get a chance to talk about Supreme Court opinions on abortion. There is so much still in the world. I'm just talking to give you all a chance to get your thoughts together. I'm gonna just ramble for a minute. And whenever one of you wants to jump in and offer some concluding comments, please do so. What should teachers take away? What do you want to tell the teachers out there about teaching this kind of stuff in young people's brains? And drop some wisdom.
Well, I'll take the privilege of, I probably am the oldest panelist. I'll say that I want to encourage, whether it's a teacher or a student or somebody who's just dropping in, that however God created you is part of your purpose. And so I often hear from folks at all ages, like, I don't know what I should be doing and who I am. And it's very obvious who you are. You're a cherished creation of an almighty God, but your purpose is very obvious. So whoever God created you to be, man, woman, trans, like whatever it is, whatever your experience is your purpose. And I'll say this last to wrap up. I always say my pain is my superpower. So whatever challenges and struggles and hardship you had in life, therein lies your greatest purpose in life and your greatest superpower. Use it. Don't let it use you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna go next because I just think that if you are an educator or a student and you're trying to find, what your place in this movement is, or any movement, I think we're seeing movements within movements within movements right now. And I think that, sometimes, I think for me, for a long time, I was like, what is my place within this movement? How do I even fit in to, what, am I an organizer? Am I this? Am I that? And I just think that we all have skills. We all have a gift that we were born with. Find those skills, find those strengths, and then, place yourself in the movement, because there's so many roles within activism. There's not just one role. Just like education, there's not one form. There's not one form of learning. There's not one form of being an activist. And I think being an activist today means not being idle. Don't sit around wondering what you can do. You know your skill. You know what you're good at. You got a loud mouth, get out there. You know how to draw? Start, drawing. You know how to organize? People follow you? Then you're an organizer. You're a leader, and I just think that there's a place for everybody within a movement. And I don't know if we've seen that fully yet. And I think that's the optimism I have, is for the imagination and the hope of young people to create something we haven't even seen yet. And I think that's our responsibility as educators, to help them imagine what have we failed at? What haven't you seen yet? And I think we're seeing that slowly come out, and I just think that the youth know more than, you know, older people give them credit for. So, you know, use that. Be that person. You can be an activist no matter, you know, what your skill level is.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I would echo what's already been said, but my general kind of thoughts about what I've seen is that regardless of where you find yourself, right, it's also the recognition that activism, right, it's gotta be tactical, right? Like, we got to put some thought into, like, what are the outcomes that we want to see, right? This is reflective work, right? What kind of world do you want, right? What does it mean to have a world where we defund the police, right? But what are the nitty-gritty details of that? And part of that is, right, has educational components, right? Like, what in terms of the content. But I think this idea that it's going to be tactical. This is not going to be like an overhauled moment, right? But it's going to be blow by blow, by you know, move by move. And there's lots of movement happening, right? For sure. So certainly not linear, but yeah, that there's, you know, think about what those outcomes are that you want to see, right? To help guide where you think your lane might be to do, in, you know, the work that you're interested in doing. More generally.
Well, we thank you so much, and we can't emphasize enough how important in this particular moment it is for us to center the voices of Black and brown women for a list of reasons that is as infinite as we could imagine, because not only the work and roles that you do and play, but also because we certainly need a different model of leadership than the ones that have been male dominated and led us through so many disappointing moments throughout history. And we just want to thank you all for taking the time to just, you know, sprinkle a little of that awesomeness on us today.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, what's going on?
This is Heather.
What's going on, Heather? Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge for these wonderful women the labor and the extra labor and the emotional labor that goes with this. And I do think women bear that more heavily than anyone, quite frankly, especially women of color. And so, you know, we talked a lot about a lot of things, but we didn't really focus in on gender as an issue of inequity as well. And I want to acknowledge that, because I know how much energy that's taking from you right now while you're trying to do all the other things you do on a daily basis. So thank you for that.
Indeed. Indeed. Other comments from attendees, other questions? All righty, here's what we are going to do, folks. We are going to wrap up this Friday. We're going to have a table talk on Latinx history, in which we invite folks to jump on and share thoughts and strategies for teaching in the classroom in particular, and then other ways. And then in July, we'll get into a set of conversations around food and culture in the Cream City. Thank you all so very much. We're going to officially stop our Facebook live stream, and then we'll sit around here for just a few minutes and see if folks have any other questions. Thank you again.